Good evening, and welcome to the John F. Kennedy Jr. Forum. My name is Patrick Mares. I'm a sophomore studying government at the college. I'm a member of the JFK Jr. Forum Committee here at the Institute of Politics. Before we begin, please note the exit doors, which are located on the Park Street and the JFK Street sides of the forum. In the event of emergency, walk to the exit closest to you and congregate in the JFK Park. Please also take a moment now to silence your cell phones. You can join the conversation tonight online by tweeting with the hashtag McAuliffe Forum, which is also listed in your program. Please take your seats now and join me in welcoming our guests, Governor Terry McAuliffe, our moderator, Lisa Lerer, and Director of the Institute of Politics, Mark Gearin.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Mark Gearin. We're thrilled to have you here, thrilled to have the governor here. Lisa, thank you very much for moderating it. Their bios are before you in the program here, so I will not rehearse that, other than to commend the governor on the very intriguing title of tonight's forum. As you can see, Sleep When You're Dead.
You know, Virginia's actually Your Excellency.
Your Excellency.
Who knew?
Even better. We would also commend the other forums coming up in the next week. This has been a busy week here at the forum. This is the fourth of 6 forums this week here, and others next week. So we're thrilled in a special way to have the governor here for his work in Virginia, work for the party, and our Nieman fellow, Lisa Lerer, to interview him for. There's certainly plenty to talk about. Thank you all very much for coming. Thank you, Lisa.
I'm going to go with Governor. Governor, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate having you. This is a very apt title for this panel because you've never been known as a man who likes to sit still. In fact, when you were running in 2013, I remember I saw some Republican opposition research that deemed it important to mention that you sleep only 4 hours a night. True?
Yeah, I don't get much. Sleep when you're dead is my
Sleep
motto.
when you're dead.
Yeah.
So now you have a little more time on your hands, maybe even time for a nap. And I was wondering, what's been the biggest adjustment to post-governorship life so far?
Well, I'm proud to say 61 years I've never had a nap, so I'm not starting out. So we're not doing much napping. It is a little bit of adjustment. I just finished up on Inauguration Day in Virginia. I was very proud my lieutenant governor succeeded me. We won all 3 statewide. We picked up 15 House of Delegates seats, which is the most since 1880. Think of that. Not 1980, 1880. It was a historic win in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So at the inauguration, Ralph takes the oath, 21-gun cannon salute. They then put me in a helicopter, fly me up to Northern Virginia to our home. State police drive me to my house and then say, good luck. So after about 4 years, first day, I went out to the garage, got in the back seat of the car. It didn't go anywhere. So I had to learn to drive again. But I've been spending a lot of time. I have 5 children. In fact, my oldest is here, Dory. I thank her for coming out here today. 5 children. Got to spend a lot of time with the kids. I have been to every soccer, basketball, football game. So I've been very good at being able to get to the games that probably wasn't able to do as much when I was governor. I'm heading up this effort, working with Eric Holder and Nancy Pelosi and President Obama on the issue of redistricting to get fair lines in America. I'll be in Texas this weekend, speaking down there at their Democratic Party dinner, so I'm traveling the country. So it's great. It's back. Took me a while to unpack all the boxes from Richmond, but it was a great experience. Virginia, as you know, is the only state 1 term. And so going in, it's 1 term, so mentally you're prepared for that. We had a great run. I loved it. I loved every moment of it. We were able to get a lot done to the economy. Most of you know I restored more felon rights than any governor in the history of America. Leaned in on the issues, and it was a great run. I miss it, but I knew it was there, so I'm on to the next adventure.
So what was your proudest achievement as governor? Was it restoring those felon rights? Was it the economy?
Well, we ended up with $20 billion of new. I talked every day about building the new Virginia economy. Virginia had been hurt very badly by sequestration. We have the most number of military bases in America, the largest naval base in America. We have the Pentagon, CIA, Quantico, all in the Commonwealth. So when sequestration came in place, it really hurt our economy. So I spent 4 years building a new economy, 200,000 new jobs, a record $20 billion of new investment. you saw unemployment claims go down to a 44-year low. Took unemployment from 5.6 all the way down to about 3.6. It was 5.4 down to 3.6. So the economy, very important, doing it. But my proudest moment clearly was the restoration of rights. It was quite a battle. I stood on the steps of our Capitol, which was built by Thomas Jefferson in 1785, and in that Capitol, in 1902, a state senator by the name of Glass had put a poll tax literacy test in a disenfranchisement of felons. So I was able to stand there 114 years later, and when he did it, his quote was, "I am doing this," quote, "to eliminate the darky from being a political factor in Virginia." So it was clear, remnant of the Jim Crow laws, clear it was to disenfranchise the African American community. So I got to stand in the same place 114 years later with the swipe of a pen and to restore the rights of 206,000 individuals to make them full citizens. Unfortunately, the Speaker and the Senate leader sued me, took me to the Supreme Court, said I didn't have the authority, even though the Constitution was pretty clear I did. Supreme Court, on really a bizarre ruling, came out and said, we're not going to let him do it the way he's doing it, so he has to do it individually. I said, fine, I'll sign all 206,000, bring the pens out, get my desk, let's go, let's get at it. They sued me again, they didn't like that, and they sued me for contempt of court. I think I'm the first governor to be sued for contempt of court. And I won that in the Supreme Court. And now there's 173,000 people in Virginia who are full-class citizens of the Commonwealth. Everybody in life deserves a second chance. In 40 states in America, you know, it's automatic. There's no governor involvement. It's automatic. In fact, in 2 states, in Maine and Vermont, you vote while you're still in prison. In 14 states, you vote the second you walk out. The remaining states, when you're out and done with probation and parole. So we now have done, we moved ahead, and now we're the 41st state. It's about human dignity. It's about treating people. These folks have paid their debt to society. They're back. They're working. They're paying taxes. Why would you possibly deny them the right to vote? Well, we know the answer to that. So that clearly was my proudest moment. It was a battle, but, you know, folks, life is going to be full of tough battles. You lean in on the things that you believe in, and as I say, I now have the record of the most of any governor in the history of America. It was the right thing to do.
Now, as I understand that policy, the governor has to individually restore those rights for each former felon. So do you worry about the durability of that policy? Like if you had, say, a Republican governor who wasn't interested in continuing?
So what I basically did is I went back and corrected 100 years.
Right.
Or I doubt anyone was probably 118, but I went back and cleaned up everything we had to pass going back for 60 and 70 years. So that's done. That can never be taken away from these individuals. And generally, it's about maybe 10,000 folks a year would be in the category of getting their rights back, or what that number is. So it's a small number. So at least the good thing is it's done. I've corrected all of those years of injustice. And there's not a day that goes by that I don't walk down the street. I was just in Miami Beach with our kids for spring break. A man came up to me with tears in his eyes. He said, I'm from Virginia, from Midlothian, Virginia. You restored my rights and you made me a full citizen. I hear that every day. My mother, brother, sister, you know, it's the right thing to do.
Do you think it had a political impact on the elections since?
You know, that was what the Republicans tried to argue.
Right.
To me, it was a moral issue that when I ran for governor, I talked about it. And before I did the mass restoration, I took a lot of action. It used to be a 13-page form. I got it down to a 1-page form. I made all of these incremental changes, and at some point I said, this isn't right. Mm-hmm. I mean, imagine having to fill out a 13-page application to send to the governor with a letter explaining why you think, the governor's busy. Why should I be sitting around reading? I mean, it just didn't make sense when you looked at the other states. So I did it morally. It was the right reason. And it was interesting when it was first done. There were insinuations in the paper that, I was trying to get all these new African-American voters in. The average person was a 46-year-old white male. How do you like that?
Yeah.
So it sort of diluted their argument a little bit. But take the politics out of it. Do the right thing. And this was about helping people. I was so tired of seeing folks talk to me on Election Day that they would go to a voting booth on Election Day and try to find one of those I voted stickers that may have fallen on the ground so that they could put it on and go home and tell their children they voted because they were embarrassed to tell their children they didn't have the right to vote. Why? Why do we treat people like this?
So this is, of course, a school of governing, and sometimes we learn the most from our mistakes. So what was your biggest mistake, misstep in your time in office? What do you regret?
Well, the hardest day I had, I mean, you have so many, I mean, there's so many things going on. There's probably thousands of missteps. I mean, that's just part of life and in business or, anything that you do. The hardest day, if the restoration rights was my greatest, happiest day, clearly Charlottesville was my worst day. We knew, I'd been tipped off. We prepared for it. I worked with our colonel of the state police and the head of our National Guard, General Williams. We had been tipped off by the FBI and DHS that these folks were coming to Virginia and they were going to come with arms and they were told to hurt people. That was what we had been briefed ahead of time. So I committed the Guard. First time the Guard had been committed in a domestic situation in a very, very long time, like 40 plus years, to deal with the issue. We put a record amount of state police down there. And what was really the most bothersome thing when I was down there to see people walking down the streets using the worst language, the attacks on the African American community. I could never repeat here what I heard every day. They would go by the synagogue and make references to Auschwitz and that we ought to burn this synagogue down. And I just wondered how we got in a place in America that people, they used to wear hoods to speak like this in public. These folks didn't have hoods on. They felt comfortable walking down beautiful little Charlottesville, Virginia streets, spewing the most vile. They were neo-Nazis. They were white supremacists. They were alt-right. And they were the most vile individuals. So I went on television. I've talked about this. I was very disappointed in the President of the United States, whom I had talked to in the afternoon. And I explained the situation on the ground in Virginia. And he came out and did a presser and blamed both sides. Well, folks, it wasn't both sides. You have Nazis, neo-Nazis, wearing Adolf Hitler t-shirts. And Adolf Hitler exterminated 6 million members of the Jewish faith. You had white supremacists, and you had alt-right. On the other side, you had people protesting against hatred. That is not both sides. Heather Heyer was 32 years old. She lost her life that day. She was out protesting against hatred. She had every right to be on those streets. 19 people were injured because some maniac, 21-year-old kid from Ohio, weaponized his car and drove through a crowd in downtown Charlottesville. So after the president spoke, I was very disappointed. It wasn't both sides. So I went out and gave my address. I told him in no uncertain terms to get out of Virginia, to go home. You're not wanted. They parade around like they're some patriots. They're not patriots. They're cowards. And it was hard because Heather had died. Unfortunately, just as my helicopter, I'd flown in from Northern Virginia, in the helicopter that I always fly on, Trooper 1, state police helicopter, just as I got there, I had been informed that my helicopter had crashed. And I lost my pilot who had flown, state police pilot who had flown me for 3.5 years. And I lost a close personal family friend, a member of my executive protection unit, who had just gone on to become a helicopter pilot. But I knew when I went out, as hard as it was to know I'd just lost 2 very close friends, that I had to speak from the heart, that in Virginia we will not tolerate this hatred. You're not wanted. And more people need to do it. So we did that, and then that night I went to see the families back in Richmond, Lieutenant Cohen's family and Burke Bates's family. And then the next day, I didn't want to do any TV. I said, I'm not going to do it. I want to speak to Virginians. And I went down and went to churches the next day. And, it was hard. It was a really, really tough day. But I just don't understand, Lisa, how people could spew this kind of hatred and say the things that they said against a fellow human being. Our country is divided. And it's as bad as I've seen in my life. And we got to fix it.
Did that day change how you viewed the country in some way? Did it change your views or reshape your views? It sounds like it was a very moving experience, very hard experience.
Well, it shook me because I've seen a lot of rallies and,
right.
You see in the websites all this. But to be there and to see it and to hear it. And a lot of the things that you see on TV are filtered out, so I saw it unfiltered. It just shook me that people could actually believe these things, say these things against fellow human beings. But, listen, we're the greatest country on earth. Virginia, as I said the next morning, we will come out of this stronger. They came from about 32 states. They weren't Virginians. They came into our state under the auspices of, the Robert E. Lee statue was being taken down in Charlottesville. I bet you half these people even know who the heck Robert E. Lee was. They came because it was a rally and they wanted to come spew their hatred. That's what's happened. But we will come out stronger. I got together with my education team as soon as I got back to Richmond. But I do think in K-12, or really, I would say K through 5 or 6 year, we need to do a better job of getting young children to understand about inclusion and diversity and how we just don't do enough of it, I don't think, in our education system. And by the time, you get to high school or even college, I think it's too late. We need to do a better job as a nation having an honest discussion. And listen, I told them to leave Virginia, but, we've had a very horrible history in Virginia. You all know that. I dealt with that. I dealt with the restoration of rights. We were the capital of the Confederacy, and there were just a lot of issues. We had one of the largest slave trading facilities in America, Shackle Bottom. So I could say get out of our state, but there's not a day myself or any elected official or any community organizer or grassroots organizer, you still got to stay in this every single day because there are so many tough issues that are going on. And unfortunately, the language we're hearing out of the White House and what the president tweets and the way he does it, it's dividing our country. It's not uniting our country. And it's really unfortunate. There's no call for it. And, I'm the ultimate optimist, and we will get through this as hard as it is. But he has not made it any easier.
So we're talking about division, but one of the most interesting things I think about your governorship was your ability to work with a Republican legislature. Now, in interviews, a lot of them said they didn't like you. I don't know how you felt about them, but despite despite that, you were able to get some things done, economic issues mostly,
That's
right? So how'd you do it?
Yeah, and you're right. When I ran, I served as chairman of the Democratic Party in America, chaired Bill Clinton's campaign, Hillary's campaign. For many of the Republicans, it was a very Tea Party legislature when I got elected. There were only 32 Democrats out of 100 in my House of Delegates. We had control of the Senate by one vote, and then, unbelievable, a Democratic senator resigned. That's a whole other issue, cost us Medicaid expansion. But I got in, and because of sequestration, I said it, putting jobs first was my campaign slogan. It was the most important thing I ran on. And I think they realized, and I got to work, that I was very serious about this, and we could work together on economic. I got everything I wanted on economic through the legislature. I got 90+% of the things I wanted of my governor's legislation. We had the largest investment in education, $1 billion we put in education. We reduced, so tuition was the lowest increase in 15 years. I worked with on that. Transportation reform, I got everything I wanted. I didn't get Medicaid expansion. That was just, the speaker at the time told me during my transition, you will never get it as long as I'm speaker. And he was right. They weren't going to buck the speaker, Republican speaker. We picked up one seat in the midterm. We ultimately had 34, but that was a hard. So we got a lot of great things working together, veterans, military issues. We disagreed violently on social issues. I have the record of the most vetoes of any governor in the history of the Commonwealth of Virginia, 120. But they were the most anti-women, anti-gay, anti-environment, pro-gun, anti-voting legislation. I vetoed every year defund all of our women's health clinics. That passed my legislature every year, came to my desk. I vetoed that. Bills to allow more guns on the street, more machine guns to be sold out of gun stores. To get an absentee ballot, you have to fax in your driver's license. Horrible pieces of legislation, and I vetoed that. And I think by the end, the point I kept trying to make to my legislature, I know you put a lot of this stuff up, and I'll veto it, and I know you can't beat my veto. And I'm very proud, 120. We had 34 Democrats in the end, 33 in my first term. If I lost one Democrat, I got overridden, and I never lost a vote. And I'm very proud of that small band of Democrats who stood with me, 120 to 0. But my point is, you can't recruit these high-tech businesses. You can't bring in the Amazons of the world or Googles of the world or Salesforce if you're passing legislation that discriminates against women or members of the LGBT community. They're just not going to come to your state. So by the end, I think they really understood it, and I left office. I also inherited a gigantic deficit when I became governor, $2.4 billion, a budget written. Virginia's a little unique in some ways. The outgoing governor, so I got elected in 13, sworn in January 14. In December of 13, the outgoing governor delivers the 2-year budget. So I just did it for Ralph, my successor. And the budget that had been left with me by the Republican governor administration was a $2.4 billion debt. Now, we worked very closely together with the Republicans in the General Assembly to deal with it. We did no cuts to education, but those are some rough times because of sequestration. And I think because of that, I was able to get good working relationship and get a lot of great things done. What do people want, your elected officials? They want jobs, good paying jobs for themselves, their children. They want quality education. They want health care, and they want to be left alone. Folks, that's not asking too much.
So now Congress, of course, is a totally different beast. But do you
Forget
have...
it.
I was going to ask if you have any advice you'd give your Democratic friends over there that you've given them, or any lessons you think that Congress could take from your experience?
Yeah, I've never seen it worse, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And a lot of it will go down to these gerrymandered districts. This is why I'm working. But, in 2016, only 7% of the members of Congress, 7, had a competitive election. Think of that for a second. 93%, you're guaranteed of winning the re-election. So you get in the general, you're going to win. So what happens is there's horrible fights inside the primaries, which pushes you, and they don't want to do anything to upset their primary voters, so they're not going to work with the other side. My belief is I would love to see independent, nonpartisan committees draw every line in America. I think we have about 5 or 6 states. California has gone that way. You can't. What happens in America is politicians pick their voters, not vice versa, and they draw the lines. They cannot lose. So we got to get to a place as close to 50-50, because competition is good, and get rid of these crazy maps with the long tails on them and make them as geographically concentric as you possibly can, and give competition. So it should be 93% competitive races and maybe 7 not, and that would help America. But the problem in Congress today is they don't talk to each other, they don't work with each other. And we got to fix it for the sake of the country. And I'm hoping, my best guesstimate is I think the Democrats will take the House. I would bet my mortgage on that we take the House. I think the Senate's a little tougher map, but I do think the House goes Democratic. And then maybe it will force the Republicans to have to work now, because they're going to have to work with the Democrats in the majority. What happened in Virginia is we picked up 15 seats. We're now 49. It has really forced them to come together, and I think we'll pass Medicaid expansion. I embedded it in the budget, and they're going to have to take out $400 to $600 million. But because there are so many there, Democrats now, in 11 of the 15 were women, which was great. I mean, women have really made a difference in the elections, and we got to get back to that, and that's what our country needs to do.
So you're clearly feeling pretty good about the midterms. What is it that is it the Republican retirements? Is it the Democratic enthusiasm? What are you seeing out there?
Yeah.
I mean, the House is it's easier than the Senate, as you say, but it's not an easy lift.
It's not an easy lift, but a couple things. One, the enthusiasm. I think in 2016, 90 million people did not vote. Stayed home. And I got to tell you, I'm really tough on this topic. People have fought and died for the right to vote in this country. I have a son in the Marines, just got back from overseas and fighting in a conflict area. People today are fighting to protect us, and you can't go vote. And I've traveled the globe. I've done business in 5 continents. There's nothing like the United States of America, and unfortunately, people take that for granted. Voting, to me, is something that every American ought to do. So I think what happened is they woke up the day of the election and said, oh my goodness, how did this happen? Trump is in. And a lot of people looked at themselves in introspect and felt guilty because they didn't vote. Oh, they thought Hillary was going to win. They didn't need to vote. So I think the first test of that was Virginia. A record turnout, as I say, 11 of 15 women, 1 out of 15, the biggest pickup since 1880. And at least the numbers that we had were just astronomical. And then Doug Jones won in Alabama, and then we just had Connor Lamb in Pennsylvania in a district that Trump carried by 22. That's the first part. So enthusiasm, women, and now the young voters. And I think Parkland, and I was, be honest with you folks, after Connecticut, where 25 and 6-year-olds were killed and 6 adults, and we couldn't get gun control after that. I mean, and I think maybe it was so traumatizing, but I think what you now saw in Parkland with these young students, they were shot at, and their voices will not be held down, and they are ready to fight. I went to the march the other day in Washington. I congratulate those Parkland students. They did it. No adults did it. You know, to me, compared to the women's march, I've never seen anything like it. So the women, the young people, and then, as you say, the retirements, I think, 38? We got 38 women of the contested 48 that are out there, the most vulnerable. 38, I think, are women. Right. I was with Emily's list, Safa Chirac, the other day. We get enough women on the ballot, so I do think, and then the number of just plain Republicans retirements, you know, having the speaker announce his retirement, and then a Florida congressman within an hour said, I'm leaving, I think you're going to see a lot more too. So retirements with enthusiasm. People just had it with the insanity in the White House today. And I'm being kind, saying insanity. I mean, I've never seen anything like this.
So what, so that's a whole lot of positive things for Democrats in the midterms. What is your biggest worry? What keeps you up at night when you think about the midterms for Democrats?
Well, good question. You never know what President Trump will try and do. I mean, it does make it nervous. Who knows what he may try and do? I don't think the enthusiasm is going away. There's a lot of international. I mean, we have this Syria mess. I mean, you know, here's the president the other day saying we're pulling the troops out. No, he was wrong. Generals actually saying, no, we're not pulling the 2,000 folks out. We need them there for 6. So I think that conflicting message gives Syria a reason to do different things, which I think it just doesn't make any sense. And then, of course, we've got to strike them. There's no question. It should be proportional. And it's dangerous because the Russians are now with the Syrians over there. They've got air defense over there. So if we go in, we could hit a Russian and kill a Russian. They could fire back at us. I believe it was totally right to tell the Russians, yes, we're coming in. You better clear out because we are going to hit these targets. But to tweet it yesterday that we're coming in with smart bombs, I mean, these are young men and women in uniform who are putting their lives at risk, and this guy thinks it's like a Twitter battle. Are you out? I never seen anything like it. So today he had to pull that back. The man is incapable of controlling himself, and it's unfortunate. I don't think he has any moral core. I don't think he cares a whit about the issues. I think he cares about what he thinks will help him win and get reelected. At the end of the day, like I did in restorations, folks, you got to fight for what you believe in, and you're maybe not always going to win, but boy, go down swinging. This guy will move like, you know, a weather vane.
So now you...
Am I clear on that?
You speak from some experience with him. You've dealt with him. You've golfed with him.
Yep.
And, you know, there's been this years-long debate now in Democratic circles about the best line of attack, political line of attack, I mean, against President Trump. It sounds like what's your theory of that case?
And I have, you know, I've known, remember, he was a Democrat his whole life. Everybody should be clear on that. I'm sure no one has any mystery on that. Was a big Democratic donor. Then he decides to run for president, and all of a sudden he was pro-choice, and now he's pro-life. He was very big proponent of gay rights, and now he's again. I mean, you know, back when I knew him, he was over on the Democratic progressive side. And in full disclosure, when I ran for governor in 2009, he did write me a check for $25,000. I just put it out there. This was all before any of this got going. It's just shocking that he's there. And I think the best way for us to deal with it, let Mueller do what Mueller's doing. And let us focus on what people want to hear from us, and why people were happy in Virginia is we focused on those issues for the middle-class families of education and healthcare and job creation. They want results. They want us to get things done. But don't think you're going to win an election by just being against Trump and attacking him every day. I think that's already baked in. They want to know, at the end of the day, most people, what do you want from your politician? What are you going to do for me? Plain and simple. Are you going to make my life easier? Are you going to allow me to keep more money in my pocket? Am I going to be able to stay healthy? Are my kids going to stay healthy? And are my kids getting a quality education? Those are the issues that we win on every single day. But boy, you got to keep talking about them. So that's, my message. It worked in Virginia. People were very happy. And as I say, we swept all 3 statewide. People are very happy. And why? Because we produced results. And, what Mueller's going to do, what Mueller's going to do, and let him do that.
So now I noticed I think you didn't really mention social issues, but that's something you talked about quite a bit in your campaign. You ran against the NRA in a state where the NRA is headquartered, right? Aren't they based in Virginia? And, you were the first Southern governor to officiate a gay wedding. So you've been very outspoken about social issues. And that's another area where there's some debate in Democratic political circles, how openly, whether you push these issues or you don't push them quite as much. What's your advice? What's your advice on how Democrats should talk about social issues?
When I ran for governor, and I had my campaign manager back there, Robbie, who's back there in the back of the room, just spoke at his class. It was a unique campaign for governor. I was the first candidate, I believe, a statewide official to come out in the entire South for marriage equality. I told women I would be a brick wall to protect their rights because we had the horrible legislation, the clinics down and all that. We were the home of the NRA. It's based in Virginia. And I am the first statewide to run with an F rating. And we ran ads saying, I wish there was a lower rating. That had never happened in Virginia before. So I took on a lot of big constituencies. And I won. And I got 1,060,000 votes running against the incumbent Attorney General of the state. The point is, to be successful state or a leader is you can't grow your economy, you cannot diversify into these 21st century technology spaces unless you treat everybody with dignity and respect. And so what I've been very successful in Virginia is putting that all under economic development. You want me to get Amazon? Stop all this. We're open and welcoming. In Virginia, which historically had been viewed hostile to the gay community and obviously on women's rights and so many other things, today, we're open and welcome to everybody. Everybody gets treated with dignity and respect. And I think that's the message. And so, as you can probably tell, I don't ever shy away from a good argument, but I believe it. And, listen, I ran for governor I'll go down clearly as the most progressive governor in the state with the things I fought on. But I don't mind getting out on an issue and losing. I would rather run in the things I believe in, and if enough voters don't like it, then vote against me. I'm okay with that. I'm going to get out of bed the next day. People can sniff out politicians who they think are phonies pretty quick. Too many people put their finger in the air. They're wondering about polling data. I always used to laugh at Robbie. He used to talk about these focus groups. I said, don't ever talk to me about a focus group. These focus groups where you bring all 20 people or 10 into a room and you give them free Oreo cookies, and they're going to determine what kind of ads you're going to run because they're there for free cookies? I mean, honestly, I'm sorry, Robbie, but come on, come on. So I told him, I don't want to hear about I don't need someone getting free cookies for me to figure out what I need to say on an issue. Just get in and strike it and do what you think is right and let the chips fall with me. I ran in 2009 in the primary. I got crushed. But you know what? I got myself out of bed the next day, dusted myself off, got back in that arena. I went to every nook and cranny in Virginia, listened to everybody, and ended up being the 72nd governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia. Patrick Henry, our first governor, started the American Revolution. Give me liberty, give me death. Thomas Jefferson, our second governor. Terry McAuliffe. That's a great country.
So
you like that, didn't you, Mark? Yeah. You think I think about that tonight? Yeah.
I think it's fair to say that you're a bit of a political animal. When did you start in this game? What year?
I actually started doing door to door with my father back in Syracuse, New York, as a very 6, 7, 8 years old. I really got involved in national politics. I tell the story. I was off at Georgetown Law School, and decided to take a buddy of mine got me to take a break to go work on Carter's reelect. I said, what the heck, I can always go to law school. So I left and went to work on the campaign, and I ended up going to 40 states, and at the age of 23 became the national finance director for the President of the United States. For a kid who'd barely ever left Syracuse, New York, it was quite an adventure. And then, so I started at that, and then went back, got my law degree. Full disclosure, Georgetown is the largest law school in America, so they don't take attendance. I went full-time day, and I ran 3 companies. I was in the building maybe a dozen times my first year. I can say this now. They can't take the license away from me. Passed the bar, but I'll be honest, you're not going to hire me to be your lawyer. But then went back and then got very active and helped, and I have so many great experiences. And then I helped my friend Dick Gephardt and Tony Quell when he did the House campaign, Dick Gephardt, and then have helped the Clintons for a long time. I love them dearly, most expensive friends I've ever had. But that's all volunteer work. I mean, I don't get paid. I do it because I believe in it.
So you've been doing this a long time.
Yeah.
And I think it's fair to say that Donald Trump blew up a lot of what we thought we knew about politics, what attacks a candidate could survive, what kind of experience was necessary. Do you think that he's changed politics in some way? And do those new rules that he's sort of been able to live by, do those apply just to him, or you think they apply to a lot of candidates out there?
I'll be honest. After he won, I thought he would grow into the job. He would work with people and understand he didn't know what he didn't know. I mean, you got a huge infrastructure in our federal government, and you're in the White House. I mean, you got a lot of experts in national security and intelligence, and that he would lean on those experts to help him make judgments. That hasn't been the case at all. What has been shocking to me is that he literally can go out and give a speech and say 15 things that are just totally incorrect. Totally incorrect. I mean, I watched him today. The things that he was talking about, what President Obama had done before he left office. Talked about the lowest African American, it dropped like 5 or 6 points under President Obama. He's gone down a half a point or one, but it is the lowest now. But he never gives credit to the people who should get credit for it. And I'm just honestly baffled about how he can continue to just say things that are not true and doesn't call on it. The press writes about this. There was a story the other day, 2,000 statements, 2,000 of them were wrong. It just doesn't seem to resonate. And I hope he has not changed the paradigm in politics. I still believe when you go out and you give a speech and you say something, you're saying what you truly believe, and it's correct. But there was so much stuff in that campaign, he said, as you know, you're a journalist, it just was not true. And people wrote about it, but it just went over their heads. It just didn't seem to. So that's something I'm very concerned about. We got to get back to the point where, the fact-checking really does matter, and say what's true and not say what you want to believe or say something that you hope people will vote for you. But we've never seen anything like this before.
So 2 months ago, you told the Washington Free Beacon, quote, "Who better to take on Trump than me?" That sure sounds like the statement of a man running, or certainly thinking about running for president. So I want to know if there's anything you want to tell us here tonight. You want to make a little news, any announcements?
All right. Well, first of all, I was at the Democratic Governors Association reception, okay? And a young man walks up to me and says, I'm with the Free Beacon, which is a very right-wing conservative, which is fine. I was intrigued why he was at the Democratic Governors, but I think he was dating someone who had given money to the DJ. That's why he was there. And he comes up and says, do you think you have a chance of beating Donald Trump? Now, folks, they put a microphone in front of any one of you. How are you going to answer that question? Who better? I said with a chuckle. And then I said I'm focused on 18. But boy, you would have thought, no one has a sense of humor in this business anymore. There are way too many lemon suckers in politics today. Have a little life, have a little sense of humor today. When I'm focused on this redistricting. I'm traveling the country for state parties. I'm helping elect these 36 governors in America. And this is the message that should be for every Democrat. Don't be looking at 20. The problem with our party historically is we focused on presidential elections and we did nothing at the state and local level. And we got squashed In 2010, we lost so badly. We lost so many chambers in America. They now control 2/3. In 2011, when redistricting came around, they controlled every state chamber. Remember, state chambers draw the state lines and the congressional lines. And we got crushed. Crushed. I'm working hard so that doesn't, because the governors whom we elect this year so it's 2020 census, 2021, they redraw every line. Those Democratic governors will be in office. So if these 2/3 Republican chambers come up with very unfair maps, in 35 states, only one person can stop it, a Democratic governor. And if a Democratic governor vetoes it, it then goes to, and generally the judge will order an independent, this guy from Stanford they hire, like we did in Virginia, and they come up with fair lines. So instead of having a commission, you can get into the same place. So long answer your story, because folks, the rollbacks, because nothing's happening in Congress today. But as I said earlier, all the rollback on these issues that are dear to your heart, or maybe some are, some aren't, but it's happening at the state level, systematically, state by state. We have the Koch brothers operation based in Virginia, Americans for Prosperity, rolling back environmental rights, rolling back all these civil it's happening at the state level. So we Democrats who've never paid attention better focus on state and local. Otherwise, we'll be out of the game from 2021 through 2031. And all of this horrible stuff I told you about defunding women's clinics, every clinic in Virginia would be closed today if I were not governor. It passed both of my chambers. Real important issues. And then, after 18, 19 people can begin to make their decisions what they want to do. But it's why this redistricting, we've never focused on it as a party. Now we need to.
So I'm going to take that as not ruling it out. All right, so we're going to open it up to questions. Please come up to the mic, and remember Kennedy School rules that your question should end with a question mark. Let's start over here.
I like that.
Yeah.
Hey, Governor McAuliffe. My name is Sanjay. I'm a med student at Harvard, but I'm actually originally from Radford in Southwest Virginia.
Great.
And so, as you know, I was just in Radford last week. The opioid addiction is sort of tearing apart Southwest Virginia. About a year ago, you passed a bill, HB 3217, I believe, or 2317, that legalized needle exchanges in Virginia. That was a year ago, and to date, there are still 0 needle exchanges. And to be clear, the public health consensus on these things is that they save lives.
Yep.
Rates of Hep C are skyrocketing.
Yeah.
My understanding is that the biggest barrier is there's a divide between law enforcement and public health. Police officials feel like needle exchanges are going to enable drug use. One, how do we bridge the gap between public health and law enforcement? Two, how do we make sure we're doing this with an eye towards restorative and reparative justice for communities that have been policed for drug use, African Americans and Hispanics? Three, will you come to Southwest Virginia and help us open the first needle exchange in Virginia?
Yeah. So what I did with the legislation is allow people to go get clean needles, which some of the legislature didn't like the thought process of that, but if you don't do that, then they're using dirty needles. And I know some people don't like the idea of allowing more needles to be out there, but people are going to use these drugs. If you can get them clean needles, you really help the process. It was controversial. We got to pass it. It was the right thing to do. This opiate crisis, it's not Virginia. It is every state in America. We lost nearly 2,000 people last year in Virginia, more than car accidents. It's our #1 cause of death. It's the opiates. And as you know, we got the issue of fentanyl, which is a very cheap drug that comes in from China. It is so addictive. You do it once, it gets a hold of your brain, and it is very, very, very cheap. You have the issue now of heroin, which is coming back because they've now made it so cheap. So it's crippling, and it's not just rural Virginia. You can take the map of Virginia, which looks like a big shoe, cut it right in half. This side over here toward the rural part of our state, it's an opiate crisis. Too many painkillers have been prescribed. So we passed a law, the PMP monitoring in Virginia. You can't issue an opioid unless you go on the PMP register to find. What happened is they get pills from you, they go to you the next day, so they were doctor shopping. We've stopped that in Virginia. We will take your medical license away from you. You have to register what you prescribe, you have to go back on it, and you have to register all of that. You cut the state this way. This is heroin problem. They're dumping it. It's very cheap. And as you say, it's more law enforcement issues that we have to deal with. So we've put a lot of money to deal with the issue on law enforcement. On the opiates, we have to cut down. Buprenorphine, which, as you know, you have to be careful about, but that does solve the addiction issue for many. But it was being prescribed too much and it was getting the wrong hands and being used the wrong way. We stopped that in Virginia. So we've led on the PMP monitoring program in naloxone, which if you have an opiate addiction and you're dying, you're on the ground, one thing will save you is naloxone. And you can go into any CVS in Virginia today without a prescription and get it, which is great. We're doing the best we can. And all of our first responders, we now have naloxone because it literally saves your life immediately. And you have to do the training. I personally have done the training for that. So how do we keep dealing with this issue? You're right. Number one, we've got to do a better job of stopping these drugs from coming into our country in the first place. That's a federal and state issue that we have to work on. We have not done a very good job at that. We've got to stop this fentanyl. I'm sure you've all seen the 60 Minutes story where these Chinese factories were FedExing all these tablets to America, like millions of them just coming in. Got to stop all of that. And then the deal with the addiction problem, we can't deal, it should not be a criminal justice problem. So if you have someone with a drug addiction, to put someone in prison is the worst thing that you can possibly do. Because once they get out of prison, they'll go right back in. So we need more drug courts and get people into treatment, addiction treatment, as soon as possible. Someone goes into our court system, I spend about $28,433 per prisoner. You put someone there for a year or two, the second they walk out, they go right back at it again. I would rather take that money, I can save a lot of money, and build more drug courts with addiction treatment to do it. I couldn't agree with you more. This is a crisis that is, and I worked very closely with Larry Hogan, the governor of Maryland, and Mayor Bowser for us, because there are no state lines, folks, on this, to regionally deal with it. But we as a nation, it's unfortunate the president did declare it an emergency, but as you know, put no funding up for it. I mean, calling it an emergency without funding doesn't do a governor any good. We need funding to deal with this problem because it is destroying rural parts of America. But let me tell you this, we need to send a message to these drug companies who have marketed these drugs, who have worked deals on these drugs. We need to go after these people. We should criminally go after these people because they have killed people. And we need to go after doctors who may be overprescribing. And if we find them, they ought to take their license away from them. All right, thank you. Thank you. I mean, you and I could spend 2 hours here doing this, which is good, though. Thank you.
Let's go up here.
Great.
Nope.
Yeah, there's.
Governor McAuliffe, thank you so much for being here. My name is Caroline Turvo. I'm a senior at the college. I'm originally from the great state of North Carolina, so another good Democratic governor.
Great.
I was curious if you could talk about what you see to be the next big policy frontier for Democratic governors and who might be the best champions of that right now in their respective states.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the next so if you go back to my premise, which I've said here all night, economic development, job creation, because if you have jobs, guess what? You got tax income, which allows you to invest more in education. What does a business want? And I recruited, as I say, $20 billion worth. I did over 1,100 projects I brought back to Virginia, record amount. What do they all want? They want a workforce. They are not going to spend millions moving to a state unless they know they're going to have a workforce. How do you get a workforce? Education. Great quality education. How do you pay for it? For the tax revenue that you get. So this is not a complicated issue. The biggest challenge we have, I think, as governors, and we all have, you have to deal with the natural disasters, let it be a hurricane or whatever it may be, those things happen all the time, is building the workforce of the future. When I left office, my biggest challenge as governor, we had gotten unemployment down to 3.6. I had too many high-paying open jobs that I couldn't fill. So we became the #1 state in America for cybersecurity, something I spent a lot of time on when I was the chair of the Governors Association. That was my big issue. I had 38,000 open jobs. Starting pay was $88,000. Don't need a 4-year degree, 1 or 2 year degree, generally at a community college. So the big challenge, what we did in Virginia is if you go get one of our credentials, let it be cybersecurity, whatever, welding, whatever it may be, we'll pay 2/3 of the cost of that to get you that credential. But if states and governors aren't building an educated, technology-sufficient workforce, 10, 20 years down the road, you're not going to have business in your state. That is the biggest challenge, building that workforce for the 21st century. Too many people, and I know I'm here at a college, too many people are graduating and run up all of this gigantic debt without any skills to match the jobs that exist today. And as a governor, that is the worst thing I can say, because you never want a job opening to go unfilled, because you won't be able to get new business to come to your state, and you're going to get the business there are going to lose it. And this is happening over and over. The debt of our students today is over $1 trillion in this country, and yet we Americans have so many open jobs to fill. That is the challenge in what we call this new disruptive economy, a new 21st century economy. And the governors and the states that figure this out are the ones that are going to get those jobs, and that's where people are going to migrate to. And that's why, as I say, my population's booming in Virginia. We have too many open jobs we can't fill today, from 4 years ago when we were hemorrhaging jobs. But it's a good question, and I think that's the biggest challenge facing a governor today, and it takes investment in education. To invest, to build. We're now the first state in America where K-12, computational reasoning, thought process, computer science, all required courses in K through 12. We're the only state in America now requires you start kindergarten, you have to take cybersecurity beginning in kindergarten. But what is that? I'm not sure how they do it. They got blocks that do certain things. But what that does is send a message to every cyber company, because, folks, cyber's not going away. This state is serious about those jobs. Let it be renewable energy, green energy, and all of that's the future, which is exciting.
Let's go up here.
Good evening, Governor McAuliffe. My name is Aziz, and I'm a public policy student here at the Kennedy School. My question is about Secretary Clinton and her, I would say, political role within the Democratic Party. Recently, on a trip to India, she remarked that the parts of America that voted for her are more dynamic, they have more GDP, they are more diverse, and that kind of raised some concerns from Democrats who are running for re-election in red states like Senator McCaskill in Missouri. So do you think that Secretary Clinton, will be a political liability for the Democrats this midterm elections? And how can Democrats, the Bernie wing and the moderate wing, be reconciled ahead of the midterms?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I just jump in with one little fact that I want to verify? Very important. You had a pet chicken named Hillary. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
We had 4 chickens in the back of the governor's mansion. But it's a good question. First of all, the overarching, no matter what Hillary says or anybody says, no other candidate should be held accountable for that. Nobody in Virginia, no other candidate running for office should be held responsible for what Terry McAuliffe says. So I start with that. I just don't buy this, Now, I'm not quite sure what she was trying to say in that. I disagree. Listen, we are one nation. We are 50 states. When I was very proud as governor, when I talked to my unemployment going from 5.4 to 3.6, unemployment dropped in every single county in my state. The rural communities saw an average of a 2.6% drop. When you're in, everybody gets lifted up. And I'm the ultimate optimist that the opportunities in my rural parts of my state. And when you think of Virginia, we lost coal, textile, furniture, and tobacco. 4 big industries in the Commonwealth. They're gone today. But you can replace them. We have in Virginia, people are always astounded when I say this. We're a state of about 8.5 million people, about 4.2 million in our workforce. We were considered a coal state. So out of about 4+ million people, how many do you think work in the coal business?
Oh, I'm bad at this game. What'd you say? You tell
4
me.
million.
A couple tens of thousands, 100,000.
About 1,500. And my point is, in these rural communities in Virginia, they're the hardest working folks, decent, honest, hard working. And because of the cost of natural gas and other factors, have hurt coal, and obviously we know about the issue of textile and tobacco and all that. It's not their fault, but it's our responsibility as elected officials. I can replace every one of those jobs. We, under my term as governor, created about 50,000 energy efficiency jobs. Solar installation. Solar went from 17 megawatts when I took office to about 3,000 when I left office. Those are all great jobs. So, listen, I don't, she's got to speak for herself and defend herself and all that. That's her statement. I know what Terry McAuliffe thinks, and my point is that there is nobody in or out, or at the end of the day, we got to lift all boats. And I really tried hard as governor. I didn't, I got Nestle Corporation to move out of California to Virginia, up to Arlington, Virginia. It was a big win for me. A couple thousand, it was great. But Northern Virginia's booming, that many jobs. If I go down, which I did a lot of it, to Danville, Virginia, and I went down and announced literally 150 jobs, it was the biggest thing of all time. That's what we have to continue to focus on. And these people aren't asking much. They just want us to pay attention. And I happen to believe through our community college system and cyber, we now got our centers of cyber, that we can build up every one of these communities. Nobody in America should be left out. I certainly didn't act that way when I was governor, and I was the most proud when I could go into my rural areas where they lost coal and textile and furniture and bring a new facility there. I tell you, that was the best days as governor, honestly. But thank you.
So we are almost at that time. You were going to get the last
question. This guy's been very patient. Oh, sorry, everybody.
Sorry, guys.
Good evening, Governor. My name is Samuel Adama. I'm from Dallas, Texas, and family originally from Nigeria. Thank you and your family for your service, especially your son. I'm a Marine myself, so thank you guys for serving our country. I'm interested in leadership development, so this is a little more about you. I'm curious to know what gifts or talents have you been given that has empowered you or carried you throughout your life's journey and your career to this point?
Well, thank you. It's a good question. If you're really interested, I actually wrote a book, an autobiography of my life called What a Party. I've already been paid for it, so I'm not actually trying to make any money off the book. But, it's a fascinating story of a kid who grew up in Syracuse. I had to start my first business when I was 14 years old because I was going to have to pay for college. I started sealing driveways by the age of 15. I'd gone out and got a big truck. I started doing parking lots. I remember like it was yesterday. I went out and got this truck out of an old graveyard, fixed it up, worked oil and gas. I remember it like yesterday, driving home from Liverpool, New York, down Interstate 81. Huge, I'm 15, huge truck, about twice as long as this podium here. I'm going down Route 81. There's a state police substation off on the right. I am hitting the horn. I am waving. I'm sitting up in this huge cab. I don't have a driver's license. I don't have a license plate on the truck. But boy, oh boy, I was an entrepreneur. I was in business. Probably couldn't get away with it today. But, I went on and, as I say, became our youngest bank chairman at the age of 30. I've been involved in starting 30 businesses. Some work, some don't. I've never worked for anyone in my life. I've been an entrepreneur. You're going to fail at things, and everybody loves to jump on people who make mistakes, and it's part of life. And I tell young people all the time, what a life. I think about the life I've had and the experiences that I've had and the people I've gotten to know through politics and business. I've done business all over the world. My attitude always is try it. Folks, you're going to make a mistake. You're going to fail. That's okay. The key is you get yourself up the next day and you get back in that arena. As I say, when I ran for governor in 2009, I ran on a platform of big ideas, high-speed rail, renewable energy. I said, I got big ideas. If you don't like my big ideas, don't vote for me. And they didn't. I got crushed, but that's okay. I got back up the next day, got back in that arena. And I tell young people, don't have such a set path in life, because opportunities will come along. And if you're so set in being here, if I was so set that I wanted to graduate from Georgetown Law School, I missed one of the biggest opportunities in my life. And I'm here today because I decided to take a risk. And I tell young people, try it. You're young. Many of you yet don't have children to worry about. You can try a lot of different things. You're gonna make mistakes. It's okay. And people will jump on you because people love to jump on people. Don't Who cares? Go do what you believe in, most importantly. Go do, most importantly, what you have fun at, that you enjoy. It is your life. So I've always had this optimistic attitude. I've never needed much sleep, to be honest with you, but that's okay. I've always driven people around me batty because I'm always up and calling and all that. But I'm an ultimate optimist. I see the good in people. I don't gossip. I'm not into negative energy. Negative energy hurts you. Get your mind in a different place. Stay optimistic. Stay upbeat. Get into politics. You can change people's lives. Don't let anybody tell you you can't do it. I heard that my whole life. You're too young. Try it. And my attitude is go for gusto and keep swinging. Get up to that plate every day. Every office I've ever had, I've had the plaque behind me of Teddy Roosevelt. You know the quote I'm talking about? That poor timid soul who knows neither victory nor defeat. Face is marred with blood and sweat. I don't want to ever be that timid soul, folks. I want to be marred with blood and sweat, fighting for what I believe in. And I've lost a lot, and I've made a lot of mistakes in life, as we all have, and learned bomb. But you know what? Honestly, I think Virginia's a better place because of the things I fought for, and people's lives are better, and that's why you get into politics. Thank you.
Well, on that note, thank you for coming. It was a pleasure.
Lisa. Thank you. Now, is anyone here from Virginia? How many from Maryland? Oh, good. No one from Maryland. Well, Maryland is famous for their Maryland crabs, And so about 2 years ago, I'm out with VIMS, which is our marine science, and I'm out with a bunch of scientists, and we're augering down